So as we get started with this program, I wanted to share a little bit of my story of why I decided to become a health coach and to work alongside Mission 22's objectives to help veterans after combat and after going through an immense amount of stress and learning how to live well. So as far back as college, when I was about 17, 18 years old, I caught the bug of endurance sports and got into ultramarathon running. Had a bunch of friends who were not a very good influence on me. And over the course of 3 years in college, I ended up running something like 19 ultras, leading up to my biggest ultra, which was called Pinhoti back in 2010. So I was 20 years old, I did this 100-mile race, and it was great, and things were going well, until they weren't. There are a lot of things that I took for granted as an endurance athlete. And when I was that age, you're kind of bomb-proof anyway. You can sort of take on anything. And I rode that out until I started to kind of get injured. In the meantime, I was in the Army ROTC program at Auburn University. I was studying to become an engineer and was eventually put into an airborne engineer unit in J-Bear, Alaska with the 6th Engineer Battalion. My entire time through that, I also joined the U.S. military endurance sports team and really dove into that world as well, kind of in my spare time. I wanted to learn as much as I could about endurance sports, performance, nutrition, and all of these things, but never really knew how to take that and give it back to others, to tell others the lessons that I had learned just through a lot of trial and error. So fast forward to 2017, I was doing a half Ironman in Victoria, British Columbia. Those races are composed of a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike ride, and a 13-mile run. Leading into that race, I had a coach at the time. He was great. He gave me a really good training plan to follow. I was following the traditional nutritional guidelines that you're given as an endurance athlete. I had enough rest leading up to it. I had my pacing down for the day. Everything seemed to be going well until about a mile and a half or so until the finish line, and I bonked. And what that means is basically it's when your brain detects that your body is low on glucose and just shuts everything down. Like it shuts down all systems until you get refueled or just take a nap and are able to recover. And I had to go back to the drawing board. Something was not working. And during that time of figuring out what went wrong, I discovered there was a lot of misconception about what it means to fuel well as an athlete. And in that journey of figuring out how do I become a more capable endurance athlete as I had been back when I was doing ultras, I learned a lot of other things about how the health landscape and the things that were given were just false. And they were based on reductionist science, they were based on interest of larger companies, they were based on government policies that were outdated, and the rabbit hole went really deep. So I discovered that it wasn't so much that I needed to just cram my face with sugar and glucose and carbs were just your main, source of athletic performance basis. Like it was a lot more than that. We were kind of missing the forest for the trees. And I was the typical, I had tons of, grains and stuff for breakfast because you're told, you need to have your oatmeal because it scrapes away the cholesterol out of your, internal systems, whatever that means. You need to have, top off your glucose, get your protein and your sugars within 30 minutes after a workout, and so on and so forth. All of the traditional ways of doing things that I just took at face value until I had that experience at Victoria and I had to just go back to the drawing board. So where I ended up with that is I learned the importance of switching my body over to being a more efficient fat burner. I learned how to become bonk-proof, essentially. And I saw that within that transition, a lot of people eat in such a way, whether they're an athlete or not, that is very skewed towards carbohydrates. We'll get more into the nutritional section in a future video, but I learned that the same issues that endurance athletes can potentially have in bonking in a race are not dissimilar from the rest of the population, because the way that we are eating, the way that we're operating in the world in this modern environment is so disconnected from what our genetics expect. As an example, roughly 70% of the food that's available at the grocery stores today did not exist in the human diet prior to about 150 years ago. That's a massive issue. And as I continued to kind of peel back the onion layers and see how big of an issue it was, I knew I needed to tell others in such a way that it made sense and could help them become better athletes or just become healthier and do the things that they want to do, to be able to live long, like have a long, fulfilling life with their families, be able to pick up their kids when they're 80 years old still, instead of just managing sickness for the rest of their life. And so after I finished my active duty time, I joined a reserve unit, which I'm still a part of. And so being able to do that part-time to finish off my service in the military while working with my family of veterans, becoming better versions of themselves in health and fitness and nutrition and all of that other stuff, that's why I'm here today. And so with that, we'll continue on with our course.